Welcome to the long-term series Whole of Community Change and today's episode 6, featuring Annalise Jennings, Director of Dynamic Exchange, Maryanne Coconut, Elder of the Napranum indigenous community in Queensland, Australia, Duri Davui, spiritual leader of Napranum, Lesli Dahlke, author, researcher and veterans advocate, and Matt Presti, cosmologist and researcher. Annalise Jennings, as the Director of Dynamic Exchange, has over 25 years' experience in senior roles in financial services and other sectors, including property and small business. She's an experienced facilitator and has led business transformation in project management in large organizations and has an extensive background in risk management and organizational culture. This experience has been gained through working in India, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. She's spoken on transformation and maximizing human potential in a variety of business and community forums. Jennings is also passionate about teams and helping them discover healthy working relationships and celebrating success and empowerment. She balances her time between key corporate engagements, her part-time career as an alternative health practitioner, and has always combined her working life with parenting and study. She strongly believes in human potential and is a passionate advocate of ethical, corporate and individual behavior in the business community. As Councillor and Elder of the Napranum Aboriginal community, Maryanne Coconut's responsibilities include education and social services. She believes education is essential to community progress and has led the way completing a Bachelor of Community Management. She was recently quoted, "We the people are the caretakers of this land, given to us by the Creator Spirit, who is the Creator. We acknowledge Him with adoration and thanksgiving. We the elders are the gatekeepers. This is an age-old role, given to us by our ancestors. Our knowledge and wisdom of our country is still strong, and will remain invisible and well guarded in our spirit till we die. Our spirit will pass this knowledge on to the next elder in line." Duri Davui is a spiritual leader of the Napranum community. She is also the coordinator of the Elders Justice Group and development worker. She holds a diploma in community development and has attended the Whole of Community Change Women of Worth program. Her message to the world is be strong and never give up. Matt Presti is an independent researcher of nature and universal law and an evolution and consciousness explorer. For the last several years, he's freely given his time and effort to providing those interested with a chronicle of his journey in this realm as host of the Exploration of Consciousness. After researching the collective works of Dr. Walter and Leah Russell, Presti has branched into production of a video series along with co-producer Robert Oatey, which greatly assists to explain universal law, natural science, and the living philosophy as authored by the Russells to the world. Through this endeavour of the heart, he strives to assist in laying the foundation upon which a world brotherhood and sisterhood may be built for the benefit of all mankind. And Lesli Dahlke is a Southern California native. Being a native is a rarity for most Californians, who frequently come from other places in the country. But proudly she was born and raised in the bright, beautiful Golden State. She describes herself as a lucky child of the 50s, greatly loved by her parents. It was a time of innocence, a time when life was as gentle as a warm breeze. It was a time of growing up during the Helicon days. She was raised in the San Fernando Valley, one of the original, vast booming, post-World War II suburbs of Los Angeles. She grew up in the shadows of Tinseltown's glamour, its glitter and the glory days of Hollywood. Her father, Delmore, was a noted and successful television and movie star. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree from California State University and became a practitioner of television and film production. Her secondary emphasis was on the written word of journalism, and as her career began, she pursued a successful career in television media production. Although her industry experiences were vast, challenging, and never routine, the most personal challenging experiences were yet to come. Dahlke was diagnosed with 3 virulent cancers caused by exposure to the carcinogenic Agent Orange while traveling with the USO as an innocent 18-year-old girl in a war-torn Vietnam. As of this date, she lives daily with 2 rare and active cancers attributed to Agent Orange exposure. Her life and story is explored and shared in the profound book The Best Is Yet to Come, and recently quoted, "I never miss a moment of this beautiful life. I am always filling my heart with the vivid colors, textures, and glorious memories that make up the unique tapestry of this wonderful journey we call life." Annalise Jennings, Maryanne Coconut, Duri, Matt Presti, and Lesli Dahlke join me in this, the 6th episode in the long-term series Whole of Community Change at DG Networks, a member of Universal One Broadcasting. Welcome back to the long-term series Whole of Community Change, the 6th episode in the series today, and our participants are Annalise Jennings, Maryanne Coconut, Duri, Matt Presti, and Lesli Dahlke. I shall start with yourself, Annalise. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you, David. It's great to be back.
And Maryanne Coconut, welcome to you, Maryanne.
Good to hear your voice again.
And Duri, welcome to you, Duri.
Hello.
And Matt Presti, Matt, welcome.
It's my pleasure to join you all. Thank you.
And Lesli Dahlke. Lesli, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Start with yourself, if I may, Annalise Jennings. Before we jump into the program, could you, as usual, provide a brief overview of Napranum, Whole of Community Change, and what you aspire to there and what you have created thus far since 2009?
Thank you, David. I'll start by saying it's been a co-creation with the community. But the meaning of the words dynamic change really do encapsulate what whole community change is all about, because it refers to a reciprocal energy of giving and receiving, and the knowing that that energy exists within us, between us, and between and the environment, out to society and out to humanity. So at a really practical level, it's all about the making and building of community from inside. It's about all of us, whether we are community, NGOs, strategic partners, government, all of us coming together to share our wisdom, our stories and our knowledge change. So this is a shift from paternalism, control and intervention to true community ownership and self-determination. So whole of community change responds to the voice of the people, and it comes about through extensive community engagement, and the outcome of that engagement is then pulled together into priorities and strategies that take care of the whole and creates a balance between economic development and the spiritual well-being of the people.
Annalise, thank you so much for that. I shall move on to Maryanne Coconut. Maryanne, just a brief introduction, your thoughts today as we start this program.
An elder, a traditional owner group. So happy to be here and to talk with you and the other two. Hopefully that we'll have a good time talking.
Thank you, Maryanne. Let me move on to Duri. Brief introduction, your background as both a spiritual leader, I believe, and your role in Napranum today.
At the present in Napranum, I work with the justice group which comprises of the elders, the traditional elders of Napranum. We have been working together for a number of years, and I'm also working on the area of community development.
Duri, thank you very much for that. Let me move on to Matt Presti. Matt, welcome to the program. Thank you as well for participating. Your background, if you may.
Thank you, David. I'm a 7-year-long Walter Russell researcher, musician, very much into philosophy, and simply finding ways to apply and develop character, firstly in myself. In order to help the world, we have to help ourselves. We have to develop our characters, and I feel that the Russell's message was very much something that can help others. As Edwin Markham said, in vain do we build our cities if we do not first build our people. So in that spirit, I look forward to helping with character development in humanity so that we can have lasting civilizations.
Thank you so much, Matt. And Lesli Moore Dahlke. Lesli, thank you so much for participating today. A brief background from yourself, if you may.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I am a writer. I'm a new writer. I've written a book on inspirational stories of my life. When I was 18 years old, I traveled to Vietnam during the Vietnam War with the USO and the United States Army, and was extensively exposed to Agent Orange and developed 3 cancers. And I am a long-term cancer survivor, and I hope that I am inspirational to others and a good showing of strength that even you walk with 2 cancers, you can walk tall and strong and proud.
Lesli, thank you so very much. Let me move on and talk about 2 areas that we're going to cover today, if I may. The first one, and you may have the notes that I provided all of you, but for our listeners, it's going to be about emergence of authentic roles and resonance between men, women, and children, which is very much defined by the work that has been brought to the community by Annalise Jennings and the whole of community change, in that including Women's Healing Program, which is one of the components in that program, and also young adults leadership capability. This is another component in the program which covers the age groups of 18 to 30 years old. And then finally, towards the end of the program, talking about spiritual awareness in terms of human relations, something that Matt Presti, of course, is very involved in with the work of Matt Presti, and of course all of you at Napranum are very involved in that as well, which leads to thriving economies. So with that in place, let me go to Annalise Jennings to ask you about, for our listeners, a general overview of Napranum as a model that is gearing up constantly and creating a stage, championing social and economic change in those areas, in indigenous communities. Would you like to briefly talk to that, Annalise?
Well, in 2011, the Napranum Council invited me to come and work with the community in creating a visionary plan for future generations. And so that involved extensive community engagement and the creation of a visionary plan. But the essence of that plan is that it finds the balance between building infrastructure and viability in the community, but also at the same time building the will, the desire and the capability. And so whole of community change started to grow. It grew from purely strategy and visionary perspectives and started to engage parents, young adults, students, mums and dads, elders as the cultural leaders of the community in this conversation about who am I, what do I stand for, what's deeply meaningful to me. And so it starts very much with a conversation around those age-old questions. And so in terms of creating that sustainability or a dynamic and thriving community moving forward, I feel it's important to note that this was created for those who care for the well-being of Napranum, and the program was created for people who really wanted to be a part of creating a community that worked for everyone, where we leave our individual agendas at the back door and that we come together with the faith and the energy that such a place can be created. It's about bringing together people who are willing to take accountability in building this strong and dynamic community. And I feel that most importantly also about focusing on the gifts and assets of community. Communities are not a problem to be solved. Communities are people with gifts, with assets, with contribution. And so this is a focus on that potential rather than a focus on building or continuing to create services and infrastructure that feed the deficiencies of community. And so we've been able to find that very delicate balance in the creation of this program.
Annalise, thank you very much for that. Maryanne Coconut, your thoughts today as you look back over the progress that has been made thus far since 2009, the changes that you have seen in your community. Could you perhaps highlight those briefly?
Yeah, the changes that I see is we said about the new infrastructure, the new store, and we are looking forward for the civic centre, which will be a one-stop shop for all the organizations around here. So we look forward to that, and we as elders of the community, we support our people in a way to build their relationship with the community, with the families, not forgetting to think about our creative spirit that gives us the knowledge and wisdom that we can pass on to our people of all ages, which will build their lifestyle and their everyday living by looking on the inside and building the spirituality and belief that there is a creative spirit that can be with us through our walk in life, through the journey.
Maryanne, thank you. Let me turn to Duri. What have you seen in that community thus far since the program has taken effect since 2009?
Since 2009, what I have seen in the community, because of the healing program that goes on in the community, most of the people in the community are appreciating the good values that they have retained from that healing. Through that healing, they have appreciated, they have embraced the feeling of knowing their country better. When I say knowing their country better, it consists of land, culture, discipline, and activities, cultural activities which they engage in. Really, they have achieved. It's an achievement because of the struggles that they have gone through. They have come through. They're now realizing that the cultures or some of the ingredients of culture that has been lost, it's beginning to be sustained.
Thank you, Duri. Interesting use there of sustainability. And now, having established the basis of the dialogue, we're going to move Annalise into young adults leadership and the capability program that you have as one of your components, and in that, self-esteem, confidence, community leadership, responsibility, empowerment. Would you like to talk to this with emphasis on the infinite human potential gained by those teachings that you lay out, that empowerment that you are driving there for the younger people of the indigenous community?
The young adults leadership and capability program is the cornerstone, really, of whole of community change. because it's that particular pocket of people in that age bracket where the elders are really looking to them to stand up, to step up, and to become prominent leaders of the community. And the youth are looking at them as role models. So they are a really essential part of this whole movement. Now, the philosophy of the young adults program, as it is for all of whole of community change, is about choice. So this is about leveraging the gifts, the potential, the strengths of every young person who takes part in this program, and then aligning them to career aspirations, to pathways, to leadership opportunities within the community that they are actually spiritually and emotionally connected to. And so the likelihood that they will stay in those roles, or that they will really give those roles their absolute maximum heart and mind, escalates, because they are so connected to it, because they choose it for themselves. And so to give you an example, I always think about this young man. I won't say his name, although I'd love to, because he's just such a great young person. But he came along to the first coaching session that I had for the young adults program. Sat through the whole coaching session, and I wasn't sure that I was really connecting with this young man. He didn't make eye contact with me, but he sat through it all, and we established, or he established for himself, some of his strengths and some hopes and aspirations. I really wasn't sure if he would continue with the program. But then we ran the 3-day leadership program, and he turned up. Not only did he turn up early every morning and participated really well. But again, he was really quiet, and again, I wasn't sure what he was really gaining from this. After the program, I ran more one-on-one sessions, and again, he turned up to the one-on-one session. And this was really, the session was about consolidating the learnings and getting really clear about the career pathway, and really getting out there and, wow, you know what, I can do this, I can stand up, and I can achieve my hopes and dreams. And I said to him, look, I'm just not really sure what you're getting out of this. I just need to check in with you and understand how you're going. And he looked at me, for the first time, he looked at me in the eyes, and he said, Miss, he said, I have gone out there, I've got the job of my dreams, I'm turning up every day, and I'm off the grog. And you could have just absolutely knocked me out of my chair, because this young man had actually gone out there and achieved everything that he had set out to do. But what really threw me, I always believed that he would achieve the career pathway that he wanted. But what threw me is that he said he was off the grog, or he was off the alcohol. And to me, that was a new piece of information, because I had never asked him. Now, this is the essence of the program. I had never asked him about his issues and about his challenges, so I didn't know that he had an alcohol problem. I asked him about his hopes, his dreams, and his potential. And so through this whole process, we fed the gifts and the potential of this young man. Now, had I asked, what are your challenges? What's stopping you? And he would have told me, well, alcohol is my problem. Then I might have gone into a big spiral about trying to help him with alcohol. And so again, it's, where do we want to put our energy? Do we want to put our energy into services that feed the deficiencies of our people, the deficiencies of community? Or do we want to put our energy into feeding hopes and dreams and potential? So there's a golden example of a young man that, and he said to me at the end of it, he said, nobody had ever asked me what my potential was. Everybody was focused on what I was doing wrong. What feeds disengagement, what feeds sadness, is that we are constantly told we are wrong, that we are constantly told we have a problem. And so I still see this young man around the community. He's always got a uniform on. He's always on his way to work. He's always doing something active and creative for the community, and he wasn't working before this. So it's a miracle in him. You know, he created this, and really I saw my role as opening some pathways and asking some great questions. He did it all for himself.
Let me turn to Maryanne. Maryanne Coconut, your reflections on this, how it's changed the community from your perspective as an elder. This must be very encouraging for you, Maryanne.
It is very encouraging, and we are so proud, the elders in the community, that our young people are taking the stand to be leaders in our community and to be the voice for our community. And we believe that we are the role models for them, and we want them to see what's in us that they want us to pass it on to them. And we believe we are in the community where our young people, youth and young adults, are always watching and looking at the elders and hearing them speak and listening to us, because we believe that we have the knowledge and the wisdom that they need to hear from us.
Duri, your role here, what you saw through your eyes, this is very important for you because you're involved in justice policies for Napranum. How do you see this rolling out, this leadership and capability program?
What I have seen, these young people who are having young families, they have worked hard to retain a good relationship between them and their partners and their children. Families have built that trust in young people, and these young people are leaders in those young families. At the same time, they are showing younger people the way. Also, I'd like to say here that they have showed that they value their identity. And while through this, they have engaged in community functions or community projects which builds the community in Napranum.
Duri, thank you for that. So here we are, Lesli Dahlke. Lesli, Los Angeles, California, a long way away from Napranum, as am I, in northern Queensland. This is quite a astounding set of programs that have been laid out here for Napranum. What an amazing story to hear, especially with these young adults who are clearly valuing their identities. What are your thoughts to this, Lesli?
Well, I'm very impressed by it because I think that the young people are truly the gifts that we have at the moment, and it sounds like they're being very nurtured, and the young people need to be encouraged through their own abilities and their talents that they have. And I think that when we as older individuals in a community can support our younger people with what we feel is their gifts, their blessings, and what they have to give, that they are more likely to thrive in that environment than, as they were mentioning before, just constantly putting down what you cannot do. And I think it's the encouragement and the nurturing that's really, really the growing matter here that I think is very, very impressive.
Thank you, Lesli. Nurturing is a really important word. And Presti, Matt, you're in St. Louis or near St. Louis in the United States. Again, an impressive set of programs that are taking place here. Your thoughts, you're close to Ferguson today, and of course you're seeing the disturbances in America, and This is a great model that is being created here in Napranum, an indigenous community, a very long way away from where you are, Matt. But your thoughts?
It is very inspiring. As they say, adversity reveals character. It is in our ancestry, I think, that we can find our strength, that light of our own people to move forward through adversity. The impressive part to me is the elders working with the youth. That is what I think in America, at least in some of the major cities, especially in some of the more depressed areas, we don't see that connection between the elders of the community and the youth. There are attempts through church and religion, but in familial structure, it's not as common. So when I hear of the elders working closely with the young ones, then that's the kind of parental bond, that kind of community bond that I think will certainly help to develop the character and the desires of those to fulfill a greater human role in the overall community, which will help in the end to give it that sustainability and that continuity that will result in a lasting community.
Interesting that you raise that there is a lack of support from elders in America. This is an important point, and we could go right back to the 1950s and onwards, obviously talking to the changes in a post-war culture that came about, pushing back, I guess. But could you just open up a bit more on that? Because this is an interesting issue that you raise here, that elders are not taking the position that they do in Napranum or an indigenous community in the developed world, particularly in the States. Why do you think that is?
I believe in part largely due to the emphasis that most of the culture in America places on materialism. I think when you become too material, it's as if you disconnect from what is really important. We have this syndrome in America among our youth where they're constantly looking down into their phones, into their electronic devices, and all the grandmothers and grandfathers I talk to, who I'm friends with many, and my own mother says of her own grandchildren that it'd be nice to have a conversation with the kids these days because most of the time they're looking down into their phones. So I think the emphasis that is placed on materialism in the United States, especially probably many of the Western European countries, is indicative of where we are as a culture, and that beautiful conversation that we have over the dinner table is fleeting. It's endangered. So I think we could all use a shot in the arm of, look up, pay attention. We all have families here, at least in the Western countries, that tend to have that more value placed on materialism than familial structure and value.
Lesli Dahlke, could I just ask you, Lesli, on a reflection on that? This is an important issue that is obviously being given a lot of attention in Napranum, and yet we seem to have lost that art, have we not, in this very material world, whether you're in the United States, the United Kingdom?
I happen to agree. I think that we have lost a great deal of our gracefulness among our individuals. I think we as older folks, I don't think many times we pay as much respect to the younger generation and listen to them. And I think a lot of their communication with the internet and with Twitter and Facebook and whatever the social medias are, I think that they're so focused in their own worlds that we sort of kind of pass over them instead of stopping and making a point. In my home, when I grew up, we had a meal around the dinner table every night, and we would discuss what we did, and we would share our stories. And I don't think that anyone makes the time to do that, so we have a chance to listen to our loved ones, of what they're doing and how they're involved in their day-to-day activities. And I think it goes to us as grown people to put a little bit more energy and effort into that. But I do think that Matt's correct, that there's a definite disconnect, and I think that we do need to reach out again, and I'll use the word, I think we need to nurture and encourage our young people to come back to us so we don't lose them.
Oh, I like that. Thank you, Leslie. Annalise, let me just take that to you before we head into the next part of the program for your response to that. The way that Leslie is saying so that the young people can return here, this is really important. It's all part of that remembering the ripple effect that you talked to. But your thoughts, Annalise?
It was only yesterday that I was delivering a session with some indigenous directors, and the topic of the session was around energy, acknowledgement and appreciation. And it was a conversation about paying it forward. And it was a really wonderful conversation because about everybody in the room getting clear about, number one, that starting point, and what is that one word, even is a word that we can really say what my soul is calling me to do. So to be really clear about who I am and what my purpose is, and then to go out there and have a conversation with the youth about who I am, what I stand for, and what I value about you as a member of the youth, how I acknowledge you, how I appreciate you. And so 40 people went out from that session yesterday, and they paid it forward to 40 other people. And today we had some moments of reflection, and there were some really wonderful insights that came through. But throughout the whole program of Whole of Community, elders have participated in all the programs. I know Maryanne turned up to everything, to the student program, the young adults, the parents program, the women's healing program. I think the only one she didn't go to was the network program because they wouldn't let her. But certainly there were men elders at that program as well. So it really is about the children, the youth learning from the elders, but it's also about the elders relearning and to see themselves in that child's eye, to understand what it means for a child to, how a child looks up at them and what their perspective is, and to understand that we are all mirrors of one another. And so there is no separation. So this is the spirit of connectedness where we are all one. And yes, there's a huge and ultimate respect for the elders, but there's also a respect that the elders pay back to the youth to say, well, what am I here to do and what can I learn from you today? And so to me, that's just a beautiful spirit of what we're trying to create here.
I'm going to talk to leadership and empowerment a bit more here, and raising the issues of accountability, responsibility, autonomy. Now, this is really important because now we're bringing in paternalism and control. And this is going to be interesting actually to receive some feedback from both Matt Presti and Lesli Dahlke on control as in regulation in a country like the United States. However, let me ask you, Annalise, leading self. Now, Maryanne had talked to this earlier in the program, looking inwards, leading self. This is one of your components. And of course, a later component will be the student's career life coaching program. That will be covered in another episode. But let me ask you about leading self, Annalise, how you have worked with that in an indigenous community. How do they receive this and how do you reflect upon it?
For each individual that comes into any program, it really is a project and listening on my part, and to engage the community on what it is that they're actually asking for. So this whole notion of leading self, again, starts with the question of who am I, what's my purpose, what am I here to create? And in asking that right across the community, people were really calling for, and what really came through in the personal values of the people of Napranum was love, generosity, family, respect, social justice, future generations. And so when we're clear about what this means to us, then we can create for ourselves an alignment of the mind, the body and the soul. And so that then in itself starts to create a ripple effect out to our families, out to our communities, out to society and out to humanity. And I fundamentally believe that to be true. And so coming back to this pay it forward that we enjoyed exploring yesterday, my pay it forward was every day to be very mindful of my two sons and to know that my hope, my aspiration in them was to raise two resilient, resourceful and compassionate young men. But if I can't be compassionate for myself, I can't expect it in my sons. And therefore I can't expect it in my community, and therefore why should I expect it in society? So it's all about looking at what does that mean for us on the inside. So Maryanne talked about building the community from the inside. It's also about us building ourselves from the inside and having the faith that then there's that dynamic exchange of energy between us and out to one another, and that ripple effect just continues. Coming to your comment about paternalism and control, we actually don't need to focus on the paternalism and control. We need to focus on what it is that we want. And for this community, what has been called for is this place of belonging and this place of connectedness and this place of caring for the whole.
Yeah, I think in many ways you talked to this earlier in the program, Maryanne. You talked about returning back inside, going into yourself, so that you could then come back, walk back down the mountain, as it were, be helpful in society, teach that, the compassion that Annalise talks to. Any reflections from yourself here, Maryanne?
Yeah, it's important that we look at ourselves and build that energy within us that we can share it with other people around us. It's something that the people around you see in you and what's happening around in the community. Sometimes you don't have to be heard. It's just by your action and the way you speak, the way you hold someone else's hand when they need you. Be with them when they need you, even when someone knows that they're not well, that they're happy to have you beside them, giving them this energy that they can go on and get better and think about times when they were well, even if they are not well. I mean, if they are sick and the doctor tells them that they are sick, but there's a way that other people around them can lift their spirit up by being with them, visiting them, and that's what it is. Not just people who are sick, but even normal people who feels well, looks well, but nobody knows how they feel inside them. But the moment you start talking with them, giving them a smile, that is the time that affects them very dearly, and they feel that you have a caring spirit in your community to help other people, to help themselves.
Duri, your reflections on leading self and what you've heard from Maryanne and Annalise in your work in the community.
To continue on of what Maryanne expressed here, it's a continuity of healing, knowing who I am, and to make a story of a person, or that person making a story. Within the My Healing program that we run in the community with connecting with Annalise's program, it is very important that this support, it's the support that Maryanne expressed here, supporting them physically and emotionally and spiritually. and it works, and it has helped our young people to stand together. Success is when we stand together as a community, the men, women, young people, and children.
Thank you, Duri. And Presti, your thoughts as you hear this? It's certainly a very different discourse than our dialogues. Obviously, talking to Walter Russell, but of course it's all connected. But your thoughts as you listen to this?
Well, certainly I like the traits of love, generosity, family, respect, social justice. You will know people by the fruits of their labors, and character is revealed by the actions of man. So in a community where you have that electrifying power of man-woman balance, then the children will also be in balance. So I think that's what in material society today we have seemed to lose sight of, as you spoke to paternalism. I think we need a healthy balance of paternal and maternal instincts and values in Western society as much as in all others. So I think that's, in a sense, a good roadmap for achieving the balance that will give continuity to a civilization in much the same way that we see it in nature. So, and it starts at the local level. It starts actually with the individual, as Maryanne spoke to, and Duri, to the self, that in the self of each of us is that light of our Creator, which binds us all together. In the light of mind, there is no color. So as we manifest as different races and different people, to know that when we cross that threshold of death, we all rest in that light of mind, which unites us all. And so when we discover that light in ourselves, express that to our loved ones, to the people around us, we can extend that balance, but we must first find balance within the self. So I think it's very important to move forward as a global civilization in teaching that balance comes not from a lever, but from the fulcrum of one's own self.
Thank you, Matt. And Lesli Dahlke. Lesli, your thoughts to this?
I like the connectedness to the healing that they were speaking about, that healing is not just a physical manifestation perhaps of an illness or disease, but there's healing of the heart, there's healing of cultural differences, and there's healing energy that can be given to one another just through being with one another, expressing ourselves. And I like the overall thought and the energy of the healing and the connectedness to that it all binds us together.
Thank you, Lesli. So that takes us to the healing program. Let me start with yourself, Annalise, on this one. The Women's Healing Program, hugely successful, I believe, and this is about healing. Now, Lesli is talking to healing at the heart, being with another. Could you expand upon this? What came out of this program in terms of the strengths of women in Napranum? What was it for you that was most inspirational?
What I saw coming out of the program was very much a sisterhood. It really looked at that there are answers to the burning questions, what is my purpose and why am I here? It's about exploring the rhythm of time and the voice of God and connecting with that. How do we step up and move forward, even in the face of adversity, to find that creative, that transformative spirit that says to us, it's okay, take that, don't give up, get up and keep moving forward. And so this is about finding the nature of change and the path of resistance. And, we're 12 months on from that particular program now, and I see the women in the community say that, there's a connect bond between them. They still talk about it. And in fact, I saw one of them, and she said, Annalise, I'll never forget that program, and jumped off the side of the mountain because we went abseiling, and sailing was all about facing who we are and stepping off that ledge and flying and being in that most excited and most place of wonder and curiosity. And she was the first one off the mountain, and she never ever forgot that and what it meant for her to actually do that and to achieve it. She talks about it every time. So there's a spirit, there's just an everlasting spirit that remained as a part of that program. But what was also important is that it wasn't just about recognising the self and who we are in all of this. It was also then going out and saying, okay, now what is my contribution to this community? How do I demonstrate that voice? And how do I connect with my people, with opportunities, potential that's happening in the community? And Maryanne and Duri speak to that personally than I. But what I see is a real thriving and dynamic energy.
Matt Presti, I'm going to ask you to talk to this. Annalise, Rhythm of Time and Voice of God, lovely, and reminds me of the ancient analogy of stepping off the side of the river, jumping into the river, finding who you really are, becoming that warrior. Perhaps we could go down the Joseph Campbell road here, Matt, but these are very strong attributes for all of us to find today, are they not?
Thank you, David. Very much so, I believe. In order to achieve that healing, which was being spoken of earlier, I think it does require that self-introspection, certainly. And, being in such a world as we live, there's so much focus on the things that are around us and outside of us, and very little focus today on the things that are inside of us. And I think part of the healing, in fact, the most important pillar and the strongest support beam in a community and within an individual's life is a willingness to go within. And I think once we find that light, that true sense of who we are, then the image we reflect is a true sense of who we are.
Maryanne Coconut, these are big areas today, I'm sure, in your community. This is a huge subject. But any thoughts from yourself, Maryanne, as you listen to this?
I believe that we sometimes in the same page, sometimes not. But being in the community, we see and we hear, we do things, helping other people. That is a way of healing. When we went on the trip, the women of work, we had young women that never ever went out of the country. And as they spoke, there was tears pouring out of their eyes. They were emotional, of course. They were touched by this time when we were together. They were able to feel they were part of this joint hands together. The tears that came out of their eyes, that was how they felt about the women. When we came together, we sang and we laughed and we joked. And in the night, and we saw a star and we started singing, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Because we believe that we shine like the star when we are in the community.
Duri, would you like to add to that?
It is a time of listening, times when so much busyness in life and things that happen, it is difficult to stop and talk, especially the young women that we care. And having that opportunity of that session that we went on, it allowed the younger ones to share their lives with elders, and the elders that were present there were able to share with them, with the younger ones. I could also see there was a lot of openness, there was a lot of trust, and there was a lot of love between the older ones and the younger ones. And with the community, being away from the community and coming back into community has created a lot of togetherness in the community.
So I'm going to start with yourself, Leslie, if I may, because we're talking about in this belonging, particularly in the indigenous culture. They understand belonging to the land belongs to us. And in all of this, it's healing for all peoples and living creatures as well. And I wish to add that in, that it's not just people, it's all creatures. But the remembering process, Leslie, this is important, is it not, in a very archetypal way, remembering who we are today, where and how we need to be in this world?
I believe it is, David. I think it's very significant. I think that our hearts need to be opened at any opportunity for anything that comes our way, whether it's young people or experiences or the beauty of the land or the freshness of the air. I just think that there's our hearts are, I call it a very stretchy place. The heart is a place that has no ending. It's just opened, and you can just fill it with the entire universe. And I think that we really just need to get in touch with who we are and where we're going and all of those around. And I believe that when you have that kind of sense, it generates out and it generates back to us.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to just take that to you, Maryanne. We've talked about this before, Maryanne. We talked about remembering, very important. Would you like to just talk to that briefly?
It's always a question, who am I? That's where it all comes out, that you suddenly see a clearer picture of who you are, remembering where you come from and where you are going. It's a journey that never ends, that continues that we continue to travel today, whether it's going up the mountain or down in the valley, crossing the rivers, walking through the desert. It's this journey that we take each day and every day. We know that there is always hope at the end of the tunnel, that light is always there. It's not a long, dark tunnel. It's a tunnel, a light at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, Matt, Presti, would you like to add to that, Matt? I guess in many ways I was talking to the loss of feminine wisdom here as well in our world, very masculine orientated, dominated perhaps. But this is also talking to feminine wisdoms in community, even perhaps defining the next era of our human growth and our consciousness. Your thoughts, Matt, Presti?
Thank you, David. I believe with all the displaced people who walk this planet, and thinking of the historical perspectives of, there's not one race on this planet who has not been enslaved by another, and much healing is required for the planet Earth. And I think that as she was speaking about the land and our connection to it, I thought of roots, and our deepest roots are in the light. I believe the light of the Creator, which every race stems from that light. And it's my sincere hope that as we move forward as a species, as a human species, that we are able to take the lessons of the land and yet be able to integrate the deepest roots, which come from that love, that eternal love that creates this entire universe. And in my hopes that all of us will be able to teach this to our children. And it starts, as we've been speaking of, with an individual, and it stems from the light to the individual and then to the community and finally to the world. So having the balance within a community, the equalness, the equality of male and female, and the acceptance of the roles that we play and the rearing of our children into young men and women. And through listening, through healing, we will create that eternal continuity of civilization between the brothers and sisters on planet Earth.
Duri, would you like to add to that your thoughts?
it is a good feeling to experience that in spite of all the struggles, in spite of difficulties, there's always hope. There's always room to be strong, stand up, and know in your being that there is hope.
Annalise, I'm going to take this to yourself now. We talked about remembering and feminine wisdom, the strength. We talked about the warrior in our last program with Margaret Wheatley. Now, bringing this to the children in culture. Now, this is a different direction. How do we bring all of this to the children? Not the age group that we had talked about in one of your components, but children up to the age of 10 or 11 years old. And of course, we could talk about child-centered education here being so powerful in today's world where it needs to be. But your thoughts to this and how children in a place like Napranum can now learn from the elders, learn from adults, and learn from that cohesion that Matt Presti talks about that is alive between male and female.
David, over the last 4 months, I've been working with traditional owners right across the Western Cape communities. And one of the key initiatives that's come out as a result of that, and the question has always been around who am I, what do I stand for, what's deeply meaningful to me, and what do we wish to create together. And in that question of what we wish to create together, there's a very growing sense of purpose, shared purpose amongst the people, that what they're looking for are to retain traditional schools in community, in particular from the ages of P to 3, which is up to, I believe, about 8 or 10. And the reason for that being that, so much of our hard wiring, happens in those very early formative years. And the elders want to be a part of that growth and that creation. And so to have, to retain schools in community for those early ages is perhaps a practical response, but a pathway where this could be possible. And I say that because the school here in Napranum was taken away. So since then, there's been a real yearning from the people to bring that school back, but with particular emphasis around creating that bond and connection with the elders and the children in a community, in a school. That's one of the big initiatives that's on the table now, and it's just fantastic to see it now have some potential to come back to fruition.
Maryanne Coconut, as an elder in Napranum, now we're talking about the young children. What do you see in Napranum? What do you see in the school? How do you see the youngsters are learning from the adults and the elders? How are they transforming as Napranum itself transforms today?
So the other day, I was at the kindergarten, and I saw all these children. I was asked to go down and give them a certificate, and that is the early childhood center that teaches them about school before they go into Western Cape College in Wheat Township. And they were sitting, big smiles on their face. They had a gown and a cap because it was their graduation day, because they'll be moving from the kindy to the primary school in Weipa. And it was a joy for me as an elder to sit there and hand them their certificate. And what their aspirations was, they wanted to be a truck driver. They wanted to be a school teacher. They wanted to work in the because that's where they see some of their mothers and aunties at this time in the new shop in the community. So you can see quite clearly what the children are seeing in the community that's happening. And that day when I was sitting in the kindergarten, I just thought how happy I was to have this opportunity there as an elder to hand them their certificates to go to primary school. And so it's the kindergarten that, kicks them off education and moving into primary school in township, Weeper Township.
Final topic of the day. Let's take all of this and place it into spiritual awareness, spiritual traditions, let's say, both in indigenous culture and any culture. Let's start off with Matt Presti on this. Matt, could you talk to our creation, universe, talk to the way that we work with children today, the way that we are working between generations? I've always said that we're the generation of all generations today. Bigger scale, perhaps, on the universe and how that is clearly helping here with Napranum and can be a very inspired model for countries like the United States and for the United Kingdom and others in proving this remembering, proving this incredible transitional time that they're traveling through.
Certainly, thank you, David. In the world of humanity, we have a long path ahead of us, but there is much hope, and the hope lies in the heart. As we approach each situation that we face with our hearts, I'm certain that as humans across the globe, we will learn through seeking the wisdom and the guidance of the Spirit within us. As we look out upon the universe, it is highly ordered. It is not a chaotic universe, but one of great order. I think what we need to do as well is be close to the land to recognize patterns in nature and how nature holds herself together. It is through the balance of the male light and female light of creation which gives nature the continuity, and that's why it's lasted for thousands and millions of years, and that's what keeps the universe, the continuity of the universe together as well. So I think our path forward as a race, as a human race, is learning to give balance to our own nature. That is, to balance the male and the female of our great race, and in that marriage, in that reckoning, in that awareness and acknowledgement of that equality, that it takes two. It definitely takes both lights to make nature continuous. So thus it will take man and woman together of all races to bring continuity to human civilization. And as we do this, as we learn to do this, we will be learning to live in the godly way. And that means God and Goddess together. In the light of mind, there is no sex, so there is but union and stillness. And as we reflect our knowing onto the screen of space, when we do so in a balanced way, we will achieve a balanced world.
Lesli Dahlke, I'm going to come to you, Lesli. That was a wonderful way that Matt described our world, described the blending and balancing of the male and female. Your thoughts to this?
I'm very hopeful. I'm probably more optimistic than most. I am a survivor, and I strive constantly to be hopeful and ever positive, and I always am open to whatever is coming our way, and I think that being open as individuals, we are open to the universe, and we are open to what experiences that it brings to us and what experiences we bring to the universe and to those around us. So I always just favor hope and opportunity, and I believe that those two marriage together to make us thrive as individuals and as a group.
Just going back to children in society today, it was very well described by Annalise Jennings and Maryanne Coconut. What do you think is the emphasis on children today? How should we be working with children? We talked about child-centered education. How do you see this world now transforming itself, where children are once again fully blessed, fully supported, fully transformed in our world?
I think that that's something that we have to continue to focus on. I think that they have more to give, and we have to pay attention, and we have to listen, and we have to give everything that we have to them, as hopefully it had been given to us. I was very fortunate coming from a family of love and determination and growth and encouragement. And I think that that's what we indeed need to do with all of our young people, whether they are of any generation or any culture. I believe all children are all of ours, and it's our responsibility to nurture them and to support them. And I really believe that that's where our community lies, in the young people.
Thank you, Lesli. And Annalise, may I return to you on that? We're talking about spiritual awareness, we're talking about universal values, but in terms of children in the model in Napranum, could you talk about that, your experiences of the youngsters in Napranum, how they have learnt from the elders, learnt from the adults as the community has advanced through the models that have been introduced since 2009?
The children and the elders are both asking for the same thing, and what they're calling for is to bridge the gap, that cultural gap between the elders and the youth. In bringing together a youth forum recently, 100 young people turned up over the space of a few days, and one of the greatest hopes and dreams that they've got is about relearning their culture, their language and their song. And so they came together with the elders to explore how that shift might start to happen. And a lot of it is centred around return to country, return to traditional land. And I had the wonderful experience of visiting Maryanne's traditional land and spending the day there with the children and with the elders. And we spent the day, eating from Mother Nature, the oysters and the periwinkles, and leaving our footprints in the sand. And we all spoke together as one group. There was no separation, there was no demarcation really between elders and the youth. We were one entity, we were one family, and it was just a complete joy to be a part of that and to have that experience. And at a personal level, I believe in the power of the human spirit. I believe that what's called for is a shift in narrative from problem and despair and looking at our kids as challenges or youth at risk, to looking at a shift in narrative that takes us into forgiveness and compassion, and that is possible. We're experiencing that. And yes, there's more work to be done, of course there is. So if we hold true to that faith, then my personal belief is that this is possible, and we're seeing the manifestation of that in the growth of infrastructure and people actually jumping in and creating opportunities for themselves. And that extends itself to the children, because they're watching this activity in the community, so they're now part of this new narrative, this new language, this new story. Duri talked about Duri, and so they're seeing that they're part of this new conversation in the community, and it's inspiring.
let's talk about that story as we move towards the end of the program today. A story, Maryanne, that you would tell when you're sitting in the ancient circle. Perhaps you're sitting around the fire with the youngsters, with the young children. What would be a story that you would talk to about returning to the country, to returning to nature, knowing your true self?
Yes. Well, I'll tell them a story that there's always food. You never go hungry when nature is around you. And it often even makes me wonder, because our people believed in spirituality, that there was this great spirit that took care of them at that time when they walked the country and they ate from the land. They didn't eat any food that was poison. They knew what food to eat, what berry, what shell, what part of the animal. So I would tell them there's always food out in the country, in the sea, that they will never go hungry. There is a certain palm tree that grows in the bush where we don't have to take bottle of water. We can just dig for fresh water because we know there's fresh water there. We will survive out there. Tell them that we are the survivors, that our people lived in the country and survived in the country because they believed the earth was the mother and provided them with the food and the warmth, that where they make bark hut to keep them warm from the rain, from the cold, for shelter. And these are the stories that I would tell the children. I'm sure that when they grow older, it will always stay in their mind, and that's how it is with me. When it was told to me, verbally around the fire, and I still think of those stories in my mind of what was told to me when I was 3-year-old, 4-year-old, sitting around the fire.
I must ask you, Duri, just to add to that, what you would experience sitting around that fire in that circle in Napranum.
Yeah, participating in cultural or traditional dancing. And I would convey to the children that within our dances there is discipline. And when you perform the first part of a dance, there's always certain movements, certain actions that you have to display. And with all the dances as a whole, there's always discipline in it. And I would relate it to the children that in our everyday life, there's also discipline, but discipline with love. Thank you.
And let me go back to Maryanne Coconut. Maryanne, would you just briefly describe Christmas traditions at Napranum for our listeners?
Christmas tradition is coming together as a family, as a community, as a whole, where everybody has a party in their home and invite anyone, someone in the street, even if you've already eaten, you can't eat anymore, they still want to give you something to eat. It's a time of friendship, love, sharing, and joy. So, giving gifts to each other, and especially the children, they really love their part, want to open it, but everyone else gives something to one of the family or a friend, and so that is a tradition that the community comes together and come alive with dancing and singing and enjoying life as the people. The community is the people coming together in unity.
Annalise, reflections on Christmas very briefly, if you would.
It very much reflects my tradition of Christmas looking at my cultural heritage. I was born in Italy, and Christmas is very much about the gathering of the family, and it's not so much about the gifts and how many gifts are under the tree. It's really about coming together and eating wonderful food that is traditional to our region, all of our favourite dishes, and people enjoying and celebrating in the spirit of feasting and breaking bread together and sitting around the table and sharing stories, and that's very much what Christmas means for me, and what I try to build in the hearts and minds of my boys, and to share with them that same experience. So I'm looking forward to Christmas. It's a big gathering at my brother's home this year, and we will all be together. And whilst we started as a very small family when we migrated to Australia, and we didn't know anybody and we didn't have any family here, we're now quite a large and connected family. And so I always remember that, because Christmas was a very it wasn't easy for us when we first moved to another country. And so now when I see that we all gather together, I really look forward to it. I look forward to the spirit of giving, through conversation, through food, and just to be together.
Thank you, Annalise, and I'm going to go to final statements for today's program. We talked about leading self, women's healing altogether, youth, and most importantly, leading into that, the welfare of our young children. I'm going to start with that, and I'm sure that you'll have your perspectives on Christmas. And what do you come away with today from this very wide-ranging discussion that we've had?
Well, I found it extraordinarily fascinating, and I'm very, very honored to be part of the panel today. These are wonderful people and wonderful opportunities that they're giving to their young people, and I'm very impressed, and I thank you very kindly for including me. I have the same feeling about Christmas. Mine was a very small family, but we gathered for Christmas morning, and my mother had a tradition that before we did anything, we would always have a nice big navel orange in our stocking with some fruits and candies and nuts, and we would sit and just visit and just sort of reflect on the year and our being a family and a unit, and that's always been very important to me, and that's how I see Christmas. And I also see that the work that these wonderful people are doing is in the same essence of the heartfelt giving and caring and concern for all of us, and I'm very, very humbled to have been part of the group, and I thank all of you for all of your efforts, and thank you for including me.
You're very welcome, Lesli. Matt Presti, let me turn to yourself, Matt, with the same for Christmas, and also this wide-ranging dialogue that we've had, Matt, that's travelled from leading self to women's healing to universal healing to youth, and most importantly, travelled down towards the children. Your final thoughts with that?
Thank you, David. First, I'd like to say thanks to all the panelists. It's very inspiring, interesting land down under, and I've always been fascinated by it. And just hearing the way that things work, which are very similar to the way they work elsewhere, I see the individual as a wheel, and that wheel is within the wheel of the family. The family wheel is within the wheel of the community, and the community wheel is within the wheel of the nation or the continent, and that continent wheel is within the wheel of the earth, which is within the wheel of the solar system, the wheel of the galaxy, and the great wheel of the universe. So the tradition of celebration of family, we're a family of light in the great reality, but in each of our own respective realities, we also carry that light forward. And it's inspirational to hear how everywhere in the world there is that celebration of family, I think, and also to know that as carriers of the light, we continue to pay it forward, to teach it to our children so that it may be a tradition that lasts forever. Again, thank you so very much. I'm very honored and humbled to have been part of this and learned very much today. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much. And Duri, your thoughts here on this very wide discussion today, and as we close your Christmas aspirations for this year.
First of all, I'd like to thank Annalise and Maryanne for inviting me to be part of this yarning session or talk. As we approach Christmas, it's a time of family get-together. It's a time of prayer where we think of other people globally in the world today. It's a time of reflection. It's a time of sharing who we are, what we can achieve, and what we can do together as one people. We trust that everyone who participates today will be blessed for the Christmas and the coming year 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Duri. And Maryanne Coconut, Maryanne, your final thoughts for the day, if you would. Christmas coming, and this incredible discussion we've had, so wide today, I know, but always leads to the children at Christmas time.
The final thought is that for the children, they will always look at houses with lights, and that will bring the spirit of Christmas spirit to the community and to the children. There's a lot of parties and also singing. What we do here in Napranum, we walk in the street when it's raining with candlelight singing the Christmas carol. And as we walk, there can be few of us, and then the children and other people come and join us, and the crowd gets bigger. And we know that the Christmas spirit and the children will always be part of this singing in the street, singing the Christmas carol, and sometimes singing our language songs that we always sing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maryanne. Annalise, we've taken a big journey today. I'll repeat this once more. We've travelled from leading self to women's healing to universal healing to youth, and importantly, especially at this time of the year, to the youngsters, to the children. Your final thoughts, Annalise?
I forever feel humbled and privileged to be part of the conversation in this community. Every day that I step into this community, I give thanks and appreciation and gratitude, and I learn every day from the conversations that I have and the people that I meet. And as a final thought, what comes to my mind is that this is very much about co-creating, everybody working together to create a community that works for all, and to have the faith and the generosity of spirit and the energy to create such a place, and that let that be the new narrative for this community. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. It's been such a joy to engage and to listen and be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Annalise Jennings, thank you so much. And that does bring us to the end of episode 6 in the long-term series, Whole of Community Change. I shall start with yourself, Annalise. Thank you so very much for being here today. Thank
you, David, and thank you, everyone.
And to Duri, again, a great pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, and I've enjoyed it.
And to Maryanne Coconut. Maryanne, thank you so much as usual.
Thanks to you too, and the other people that were on the panel. It was good to hear from them, and it's always a joy and pleasure when we are talking, even if we are so far away from each other, but we feel with the energy that we can draw each other together across the ocean and everywhere. And in my language, I say, uphold, goodbye, and God bless.
Thank you, Maryanne. And to Matt Presti. Matt, thank you so much.
It's been a great pleasure to take part in this today, and I wish you all many blessings from my heart.
And Lesli Dahlke. Lesli, what can I say? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so very, very much for including me. I'm greatly honored, and I send a lot of healing and healthy energy toward all of you.
And that does indeed complete our program today, the 6th episode in the long-term series Whole of Community Change. Do hope that you have enjoyed this program as much as we. You can gain information on this and any other program in the series at the official website, davidgibbons.org, or for international facilitated panels, crossingoverthebridge.com. Meanwhile, wherever you are in this world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.